Namaste, welcome back to the channel. So one of the major obstacles to awakening and finding sustainable peacefulness is challenging one's sense of an ego. So for millennia, the yogis have talked about the major obstacles to awakening or enlightenment in that language. And part of the barrier to liberation is forgetting your true nature. That you already have peacefulness, ease, grace, all within you. But we get disassociated from that pretty early in life. Usually for the first 2, 3, 4 years, we stay connected to that kind of consciousness. But then just because of societal pressures and needing to kind of fit in and organize within a society and social settings, the ego forms. And most of the time that's facilitated by parents because the parents are living in unawareness, and they pass that to the child because they want the child to be a derivation of their own ego. They live vicariously through the child, and the ego exacerbates the other ego. But ego is a very challenging thing because as soon as you begin to disassociate from what you truly are, you begin to layer the things that you think you are. So the ego becomes the identification with Brian, Brian-ness, Brian likes, etc. And the real big challenge that this creates is that as the ego fully forms, it leads to competition and jealousy. So recently we had a buck moon, a full moon here in Vermont, and in a community setting somebody mentioned that competition is really a positive thing in nature. It propels growth and kind of keeps an evolution or prevents lethargy and apathy. And that makes a lot of sense, but not in the spiritual pursuits. Because when we breed competition, it often exacerbates the tendencies of the ego. So who am I competing with? If you can break through and become the seer, you can see that there is no competition. If you want to work towards performance or presence through performance, such as marathon racing or, any sort of pursuit or something to train, that's beautiful because it trains the body to be physically well. It gives you something to discipline your daily rhythms around. But the problem is when you become attached to the competition. I will achieve this. I will beat the other. And that's exactly where jealousy comes in as well. If the ego is not tamed, understood, and balanced, it leads one to comparing. This constant and incessant engagement with jealousy, coveting the other, competing with the other. And it all derives from false identification. The ego is false identification. It's illusion. So the big work of awakening practices is to ultimately kill the ego. And that might sound like it has a violent connotation, but it's actually a very methodical and thorough pursuit of slowly erasing the associations. So through practices like meditation, prayer, drumming, time in nature, whatever your practice is, you can feel an experience of grace, an experience of stillness. And that stillness starts to erode the ego. So take the time to evaluate what you are identified with, how you have very thoroughly trained yourself to orient the idea of who you are as the focal point of all of your actions. And if you can start to ask the simple question, who is thinking this, or who is saying this, or who is kind of thinking this, you give yourself the opportunity to start to peel away layers of the ego until there is just the self revealed. So enjoy the practice. It can be painful to see how strong the ego is, but take your time to thoroughly examine all of the layers of egoic attachment and identification. Please like the video, comment in the comment sections if you have any questions, and subscribe to the page and the channel. Thank you. Namaste.